Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be talking about a series I plan on never finishing. Normally, I never say never. However, for most of these books and series that I'm going to talk about, I plan on never continuing the series. For all of these, I read the first book in the series and I wasn't really impressed by it, and I didn't feel like I wanted to continue the series, so I am never continuing any of these series. I'm never picking up the second or third book or more. I actually made this video like 4 or 5 years ago, and I think most of my answers were YA books because that was kind of what I was reading more back then. But this is all like romance companion series. I don't have like any YA in this. I guess I could make a whole video about all the YA series I plan to never finish, but these are just strictly all of like the popular ones that I have read the first book of and I don't want to continue. The first series I plan on never continuing and finishing is the Devil's Night series by Penelope Douglas. I actually read Corrupt back in November of 2015 and I had initially given it 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was just a very like decent read, I guess. And at one point I did want to reread it now and see if I would feel the same way, but after hearing a bunch of things about the series and the later books, I just decided I don't want to read it and it's not something I'm interested in. I obviously don't want to spoil anything for anybody else, so I'm not going to say what it is that I don't want to read. It's just not my kind of romance. It's not my kind of dark romance. I love the genre, but I feel like I'm very picky with dark romance, and I just don't think Penelope Douglas's dark romances are for me. I know this series is really well loved and it's super popular, and there was a small part of me that did feel left out, but I just know if I try to read the rest of the series, I'm not going to like it, so I'm just not going to waste my time with it. I'm not going to continue the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I read the first book, I gave it 3 stars. I just wasn't really impressed with it, and I didn't really like the writing and the direction that the book went in. I just feel like the plot was kind of all over the place for me. I also didn't like the characters. And for some reason, I feel like because the series is so loved and very popular, I just feel like I'm not gonna like it. You know, there are series out there that are like super well loved, super popular, but you just feel like you're gonna have a different opinion than everybody else. That is how I feel about the series. And this is another series that I do feel somewhat left out on, but because I didn't like the way that the first book went, like I didn't like the plot. I thought the plot was literally all over the place. It didn't know what kind of romance it wanted to be. Like I didn't know if it was going to be contemporary or dark. And then it was like a mixture of both, but it kind of came out of nowhere, and I just didn't like the way that it was done. I don't see myself continuing the series. I might read the other series that this author is writing. I think she's writing like a billionaire romance series or something, so maybe I'll try that series, but I just don't want to continue the series. The Dreamland Billionaires by Lauren Asher. I read the first book and I also gave it 3 stars. I feel like we have kind of a pattern here. I actually read the fine print before I read the Dirty Air series, and I actually enjoyed the first book in the Dirty Air series, Throttled, more than I liked any of her other books. I have yet to read the last book in the Dirty Air series, but I will eventually read that one. I am planning on finishing that series. However, this first book I was not impressed with. I didn't really like the writing. I didn't care for the characters. There was nothing about Rowan that I loved. I just thought he was a mediocre male character, and Zara was a great female character, but because I didn't like Rowan, I just feel like I didn't feel the chemistry between the characters. Usually like a 3-star rating for me is like I'm very indifferent to it. So I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just kind of meh for me. I don't ever want to read a first book in a series and feel meh about it. It doesn't make me want to continue the series. So I'm just not going to read the next 2 books. I'm not planning on continuing the Maid series by Danielle Laurie. I read this back in April of 2019 and I did give it 4 stars, but I remember finishing it and thinking it was so forgettable. I also don't really want to support the author in general, but I just wasn't that into the first book. I have heard better things about the second and third book, but again, it's just not something I want to continue. And again, I'm very particular about my dark romances, especially my mafia romances. I have to love the characters and the romance, and I just didn't feel that way about this first book, so I don't want to finish the series. The next one is the Royal Hearts Academy series by Ashley Jade. I again read the first book, gave it 3 stars, wasn't impressed with it. I think I'm a little over new adult high school romances. I don't know if it's my age or just what I'm into at the moment, like reading wise, but I find that I don't really connect with high school new adult romances anymore. I'm not really into them. I'm kind of also distancing myself from college romances, which is weird. This series is kind of a little bit of like a darker bully romance series. And again, I'm very, very particular about my bully romances. That is one thing that I feel like it needs to be very specific for me to actually love it and like believe it. And this one, I just didn't feel the connection between the characters, and I felt like the reason that the male character was bullying the female character wasn't enough of a valid excuse, and I just feel like it could have been resolved with like one conversation. I didn't end up enjoying this first book, and I've also heard really good things about the second book, but I'm just not going to bother wasting my time. I'd rather focus on other books I want to read instead. This next one I'm not sure about. I'm kind of going back and forth on whether I want to try to read the second book or whether I don't want to bother at all, and that is the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. I gave Brutal Prince 3 stars. I didn't really understand the hype. I feel like a lot of people really loved this book. I was really excited to read it because I was really in the mood to read mafia romance, and I wanted a new mafia series to fall in love with. But I just didn't end up loving this one. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the mafia aspect. My ideal mafia romance is where the female character has no idea what's going on and they are completely in the dark about everything. That is what I like, because then I feel like I'm discovering the world like the female character is. And this series, the female character is like the heir, so she knows everything about the world. I also wasn't really sure on the writing either, but I am willing to give this series another try. So let me know if the second book is better, or if I should just skip some of the books in the series and read like an odd one. Let me know what your favorite book from the series is, and maybe I'll try to read that one. I just thought this first book was really weak and it didn't make me want to continue the series. I'm not going to continue the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Ermintrout. I read this first book. I actually gave it 4 stars, but I could not tell you what this book was about. I did not understand anything from this book. I didn't even realize it was about vampires until like I read reviews, and then I was like, oh, at one point I kind of understood that it was vampires. There's like a very specific scene, but other than that, like it didn't really register that this was a vampire novel. I did not understand the maiden aspect of this book. Like there were so many things that I just feel like were not explained properly, and it was so confusing. And I love JLA. I have read pretty much all of her books, and I do love her books, but I just didn't really like this that much. I mean, if I really think about it, it definitely was a 3-star read for me. I don't know why I gave it 4 stars. I think just because I really love JLA. After reading reviews and hearing what my friends had to say about the rest of the series, I just don't want to read it. I don't care to read it. I don't want to read about that. It's just not my thing. And I, again, would rather focus on a series that I really want to read instead of continuing this one. This next one is kind of confusing because I do plan on reading the second book, but then I don't plan on continuing the rest of the series after that. But that is the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. I read this first book. I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, and I do own the second book, The Viscount Who Loved Me, I think. I do want to read that because I already own it, but I don't plan on continuing the series after that. I'm going to be honest, I just don't care. I watched the first season of the show and it was all right. I didn't really get the hype. Like, I thought it was great to have a romance story, and I'm all for romance books being adapted and just having more romance stories in general, whether that is romance books or TV shows or movies. Like, I'm all for romance dominating all sources of entertainment. However, I didn't love the first season. I thought it was very mediocre. I thought some of the acting wasn't that great. I've also heard better things about season 2, so I will probably watch season 2 after I read the second book. If I am going to continue with the story, it will be with the TV show and not the books. The next series I'm not continuing is the League of Extraordinary Women series by Evie Dunmore. The first book is Bringing Down the Duke. I read this when it came out, gave it 3 stars. It just wasn't really my type of historical romance. I really love romances that are a little bit more romantic and focus less on the feminism side. Like, obviously, yes, that's great. And I love when novels are very pro-feminism and just like pro-women and pro-evolution and all that jazz. However, I don't need that in my historical romances. Like, I like them because they're very like traditional. I feel like you can mix the feminism aspect and the traditional aspect really well and make it work, and this one just didn't work for me. I mean, it was fun and there were some like cute moments, but I just don't see myself reading the rest of the books. The next 2, I actually read the first books in the same reading vlog, so I will link that down below. The first one is the Hidden Legacy series by Ilona Andrews. I'm not going to continue the series. I gave this book 3 stars. The romance was extremely slow burn, and I didn't really expect it to be that slow burn, and I just didn't really enjoy the like magic fantasy element. It just sadly was not my cup of tea, which is unfortunate because I know the series is really popular, but I hope to read something else by this author in the future. And the last series I won't be continuing and finishing is the Arduino series by Lindsay Sands. This I also ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. It's a very fun and interesting vampire romance. It's definitely different from anything I've ever read before. However, I'm not the biggest fan of third person romances. I can do it in historical romance, but I find it very difficult to read when it's any other genre. This series is extremely long. There's like 35 books in this series, so I definitely don't plan on reading this whole series. I mean, if you have read the series or if you've read some of the few books in the series, let me know which one is your favorite. And if I should just skip around the series and maybe read another one. I don't know if the later books in the series are better, but reading this first book doesn't make me want to read another 30 books. I think I'm going to have to pass on this series. So those are most of the series that I plan on never continuing and never finishing. There's actually a bunch more series that I don't think I'm going to continue. So if you want a part 2, I will definitely make a part 2 to this video. I'm also considering doing a video about authors I plan on never reading from again, but I don't know if that's like too mean and like hateful. Even though I'm not gonna like actually hate on the author, I'm just gonna say like I don't want to read their books anymore, like I'm not interested. So let me know if that's a video you want to see. I don't know if that's like too negative. But that is it for this video. Let me know if you have read any of these series that I talked about and what you think about them. Also, let me know what series you plan on never continuing and never finishing. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.